Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're doing a deep dive on something really um, juicy, I guess you could say. We're going to be talking about the idea of frog farming.
Oh, wow.
Like, are we
Yeah.
turning perfectly good partners into, well, frogs?
Okay, yeah, I've heard that term.
We're going to be looking at the first chapter of this book, Queen's Code, to kind of unpack this concept,
All right.
see if there's something maybe we can all learn from it.
It's an interesting premise for sure.
Yeah. So the book starts off with this woman, Kimberly, right? And she's successful, but she just can't seem to make love last. She ends up at this relationship seminar feeling kind of, I don't know, jaded, I guess. And the speaker, he drops this bombshell. Some women are fraud farmers.
Oh, wow. So they're the reason.
Yeah, they're actually the reason the men in their lives change. Makes you wonder, right? Could any of us be doing this without even realizing it?
Yeah, I think we've all seen relationships where one person just seems to lose their spark over time.
Exactly. So then the book introduces us to Kimberly's grandmother, Claudia. And Claudia says she has a solution. She calls it the Queen's Code.
Okay.
She says it's been passed down through, like, generations of women in her family.
Wow. So like some secret knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. It's like she holds the key to understanding men or something.
That's interesting.
But then we meet Kimberly's best friend, Melissa, and she is not buying it.
She's skeptical.
Super skeptical. She's dealing with her own relationship issues and blames, men's behavior.
Right. That's a common reaction.
Totally. But then Melissa tells this story about her husband, Scott, and it makes you think, so Scott used to be this super romantic, attentive guy,
Okay.
but over time, he's become distant, completely absorbed in his work. Now, Melissa blames Scott, of course, but the book kind of hints that maybe, just maybe, her actions played a part in this.
Oh, interesting.
So are you saying Melissa might be a frog farmer without realizing it?
Well, it's a possibility, right? And, if we think about it, there's a lot of research on how our behavior can influence our partners.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, it's fascinating.
So like how we talk to them, how we react to them, even our own personal growth.
Exactly.
Wow.
Think about it. If you're always criticizing your partner, never giving them space to do what they love, well, that can definitely affect how they feel about themselves, about the relationship.
Right, this is a two-way street.
Absolutely.
But what about the men? Don't they have a responsibility to communicate, work on themselves too?
100%. And that's where Jack comes in. He's this guy in the book who is so frustrated with dating these days. He's got all these complaints about women. And actually, some of his complaints line up with the Queen's Code. It's like he's looking for something different, something deeper.
So you have these women who might be accidentally turning their partners into frogs. And then you have men who are longing for something more.
Yeah.
And maybe this Queen's Code is the answer for both sides. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. The book also introduces Karen, who is already learning from Claudia. And things are changing in her marriage for the better.
Right, which suggests that this code might actually work.
It's like a glimmer of hope.
Exactly.
So at the end of the chapter, Kimberly's trying to decide if she should learn this Queen's Code too. It's a big decision, right?
Huge.
Like changing the whole way you approach relationships.
Absolutely.
It really sets the stage for, like, a journey of discovery.
It does.
Will she embrace this knowledge? Will it help her break free from frog farming? What is this code all about?
So many questions.
I know, right? Well, stay tuned because in part 2 of our deep dive, we're going to uncover some of the secrets of the Queen's Code. We'll see what kind of wisdom Claudia has to offer.
I'm excited to dive in.
Me too.
I bet you're all wondering what this Queen's Code is all about, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's like the big mystery.
Well, in this next part, Claudia starts to give Kimberly a little peek into this ancient knowledge.
Okay, so it's not just like, do this, don't do that kind of advice.
Yeah, no, not at all.
More like a philosophy or something.
Exactly. Claudia describes it as a way of life, a way of being in the world. Like it's been carefully passed down for generations.
Wow.
It's really fascinating how she talks about this dance between masculine and feminine energy.
It makes you think about all the women who came before Kimberly in her family, right? Like, what was their experience with this code? What about Kimberly's mom, Myra? Where does she fit into all of this?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Claudia explains that Myra represents a different kind of power, one that's more about, independence, maybe even a little bit of resistance towards traditional gender roles. Claudia even says Myra prefers being a king.
Wow, that's That's pretty powerful. So it's not about being like subservient or fitting into some mold.
No,
It's about finding your own power within a relationship.
exactly. And it makes us think about what real empowerment means in relationships, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is it about control, competition, or is it something deeper, something more collaborative?
I think it's so easy to fall into that power struggle, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Like who's calling the shots? Who gets their way?
All the time.
It's exhausting.
And I think that's exactly what the Queen's Code is trying to address. It's not about
Yeah.
one person winning and the other losing.
Right.
It's about figuring out how to create a win-win, you know?
I like that. So both partners feel supported and empowered.
Exactly.
But how does that actually look in real life?
Right.
I mean, it sounds great in theory, but what does it look like in practice?
Well, the book gives us a glimpse of that through Claudia's own marriage with her husband, Bert.
Okay.
He clearly adores her, respects her,
Yeah.
and he's totally devoted to her. And it's obvious that it's not because she's controlling him. It's because she gets him, you know? She inspires him, and she allows him to be his best self.
I remember that scene where Bert's leaving for work,
Yeah.
and he tells Kimberly that she's there to learn about her inheritance.
I love that part.
It's like he knows how valuable this Queen's Code is,
Oh.
and he's happy for her to learn it from his wife, from his queen.
Yeah, it really highlights that this code is like a precious gift, something to be shared. And, you know, it's not just about romantic relationships either.
Oh, interesting.
We see Karen using these principles in her work as a teacher.
Oh, wow.
She's finding that it helps her connect with her male students on a much deeper level, which is so important, especially these days.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
So it's not just about romantic relationships. It's about understanding people,
Exactly.
figuring out how to communicate better.
It seems like a core part of this code is really about understanding male psychology. Claudia emphasizes that men have their own unique needs and desires. And if women can learn to recognize those needs, respond to them in a healthy way, well, it can create a much more harmonious dynamic, you know?
Oh, I know what you mean. It's like all the times I've tried to apply my own logic to a situation with a guy, and it just backfires.
Right. Like we're speaking different languages.
Totally.
And that's what's so intriguing about the Queen's Code. It suggests that maybe there's a different way to approach those interactions. One that's more about, you know, understanding and acceptance rather than trying to change or control.
So are you saying that women need to become, like, experts in male psychology?
Not necessarily experts, but I do think it's about developing a deeper understanding, a deeper sense of empathy, recognizing that men often communicate differently than women, you know, express their emotions differently.
That reminds me of what we were talking about earlier, about how our behavior influences our partners. Because, like, the Queen's Code is all about becoming more aware of those influences and using them in a positive way to build a more loving, supportive relationship.
Exactly.
It's like we have this power to shape the dynamic of our relationships.
We do.
This is all so fascinating. But I have to admit, I'm also a little overwhelmed. Like, where do we even start? How do we learn all of this?
Well, that's the journey that Kimberly and Karen are on, right? And luckily for us, we get to follow along and learn from their experiences. It's clear that learning this Queen's Code is a process, a journey.
It is.
A journey of self-discovery and growth.
So just like Kimberly, we're stepping into the unknown to see what wisdom Claudia has to offer.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe along the way, we'll discover our own inner queen and unlock a new level of understanding in our relationships.
Okay, so Kimberly and Karen are about to dive into this Queen's Code.
Yeah.
And even before the lessons start, the book creates this, like, feeling of reverence, like they're about to uncover some ancient secret, you know?
It's true. Remember how Kimberly's waiting in Claudia's garden and the description of the furniture?
Yeah.
It's covered in these intricate carvings, and guess what?
But what?
They're all images of Claudia.
Really?
It's like everything in her house reflects her mastery of this code.
Wow, so it's not just a bunch of rules. It's like a part of who she is.
Exactly. It reinforces that idea of personal transformation, you know? The code isn't just about changing your behavior. It's about aligning yourself with a whole new understanding of relationships.
Right, it's deeper than that.
Yeah.
But then we cut back to Melissa, and she's still struggling, you know?
Oh, yeah.
She's trying to be supportive, but you can tell she's wrestling with her own doubts.
Totally.
It's like, even when you're presented with a solution, change can be really hard.
So true. And Melissa's perspective is so relatable, you know? She's still holding on to that resentment, that blame.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, with this whole frog farming idea, can you ever really avoid it completely?
That's a good question.
Relationships are complicated, people change. Even if you're doing everything right according to the code, there are no guarantees.
Right. It's not a magic spell.
Exactly.
There's still effort involved.
Yeah.
And understand, speaking of which, we see Karen's husband, Mike, and he's a little hesitant about these lessons at first.
Oh, yeah, Mike.
Especially because it seems like they coincide with Karen wanting to have a baby. He's worried about being controlled, pressure.
Makes sense.
But then he remembers.
What does he remember?
He remembers how much happier he and Karen were when she first started learning from Claudia.
Oh, that's right.
It's like he realizes that the Queen's Code isn't about forcing anyone into a dox. It's about creating a dynamic where both partners feel, fulfilled.
And that's so important to see, that the code can benefit both people in the relationship.
Definitely.
It's not just about women learning how to, quote unquote, manage men.
Right.
It's about mutual understanding, respect.
Okay, so we're seeing this Queen's Code play out in these different relationships. But I'm still curious, what is Kimberly actually learning from Claudia? What are the specific lessons?
Well, that's where this first chapter leaves us hanging.
Oh, no.
But it ends on such a powerful note. Kimberly's feeling this mix of fear and excitement. Fear of the unknown, fear of letting go of her old beliefs, but also excitement about the possibility of, finally finding love that lasts.
And that's where we're left, too, wondering what secrets this Queen's Code holds, and if those secrets can really help us figure out this whole relationship thing.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It really has.
We started by asking if we might be frog farmers without even knowing it. Then we explored this idea of a different approach, this ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
We saw how the Queen's Code might work in real life, the good and the bad.
And we're left with more questions than answers.
That's true.
But maybe that's the whole point. Maybe the real journey starts when we ask those tough questions, when we're open to trying new things,
I think you're right.
when we're willing to challenge our own beliefs about relationships.
It's about being open to growth, the
Exactly.
new ways of connecting.
Maybe the real Queen's Code isn't about a set of rules, but about that willingness to learn, to grow, to embrace the messiness of it all.
I love that.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive today, we encourage you to think about what resonated with you. What parts of the Queen's Code made you curious? And how can you apply these ideas to your own life, your own relationships? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Queen's Code.
It's been a pleasure.